Hello and welcome to another session of mine. Today I have a fantastic and special guest with me. Today is Rachael Grochowski, principal and founder of RHG Architecture and Design, and she also sits in one of the initiatives of the Global Wellness Institute. Rachael, such a pleasure to have you.
So thank you so much for having me. This is going to be such a great conversation.
When we were speaking earlier on, you mentioned, I loved your thesis. You were talking about you've been in this industry for so long and you have believed in wellness far before it became the buzzword it is today. Tell us about yourself.
I think I actually was sort of born into this idea of wellness and well-being. Grew up in a family where we spent a lot of time outside in nature, and it made me aware of the way that I felt in nature. I started practicing yoga in second grade and meditating around the same time, and started studying the wisdom traditions in high school. So this idea that there are methodologies to support our wellness and well-being was part of who I grew up to be. And by the time I got to architecture school, my thesis was a wellness retreat center. And at that time, which was, many years ago, it really wasn't considered to be important and was kind of, my professors kind of tried to steer me away. I had integrated in sustainability, connection with the land, movement, uh, communal activities, like all of these things that we actually now know do support our well-being, and we're integrating into real projects now. It's really exciting to see how it's coming together.
A true visionary. I mean, 30 years ago or more, you were designing your wellness retreats when the world probably didn't, the word didn't even exist. And so now you've been practicing architecture for decades. You've probably also got seen a very interesting evolution of wellness and hospitality. So from my perspective, I've seen in the last 5 to 6 years, suddenly there's a spotlight on wellness. Everyone cares for it. They think it's important. Of course, it's market driven. So businesses have no choice but to get on board with it. What have you seen? What have you seen change in these last 5 to 6 years?
You know, uh, it's very, as somebody who's believed in this and practiced integrating wellness and well-being into projects for so long, it's been exciting to see the adaptation um, of different modalities, of different ways of thinking, of different materials. I think there are those at the forefront who continue to push the envelope. So as the example of sustainability, like that became a common thread in design projects. And then, now we're talking about regenerative, right? So when we look at hospitality, at first it was about, I think, luxury, right? And it's not that we've fully moved away from that, but we have integrated in these ideas of like one with the land, remembering where we're from, connection to the earth, connection to each other. And so I'm seeing like a deeper and deeper understanding. Of course, not everyone is there, right? That's like the forefront of the industry in hospitality. And there's other hospitality brands or new brands coming up that are, at a very different place. It's kind of like, in yoga, we always say you have to you meet them where they're at,
Yeah.
right? And so depending on the client, depends on, how you approach the project.
And where do you see, like now, obviously, there's a greater awareness also from the wellness entrepreneur side. And our industry is growing so quick. There's an increased demand for being one with the land, as you say, one with your community, and also regenerating and not extracting. Where do you see us growing in, let's say, the short, mid, and long term? How do you see this evolving?
Interesting question because because the growth has been so rapid over the last, I would say, 3 years, that it's hard to say. I think that there's a real danger of technology kind of, there's two things that can happen with technology, right? Like on the one hand, the technology can start to distract the integration of real wellness in hospitality, right? Like if you think about spas or you think about different types of events that can be programmed and they can use technology, like let's say it's a event that's a sound bath, having somebody who's actually playing is one thing, and then but there's often this like, well, we can do it more economically by having a recording, right? And that worries me because I think if that's what happens, then we end up extracting the humanity out of it. And while you still experience some level of well-being, it's not the same. Like there is an inherent exchange of energy when it's human to human, right? So that's a concern I have about looking at the long, uh, you know, the future of it,
Yeah.
especially as we integrate more and more technology into our lives. The flip side of that is, again, we can change the narrative and say, well, if certain things are going to happen, and I'm kind of answering a slightly different question, but if that's going to happen, what are ways that we can be in relationship with each other in ways that are more rooted in an energy exchange? So whether that's bringing in communal activities into the hospitality environment. So I think about there's this, again, we were talking about returning to the land, and I do think that the land and the relationship. So whether the regenerative farming hospitality trend continues to grow and people are actually harvesting, or are they just touring around, right? So in the where is it going to go? I think it's a really hard question to answer, except that it's going to grow. And I think there's going to be, I'm thinking more about the challenges and the barriers to authenticity, and retaining that over this short, medium, and long-term projection, because as like anything else, and again, I'm going to go back to the sustainability movement, as that grew and as wellness grows, it can really start to lose the authenticity because not everybody understands what it actually means, what wellness means, or how to actually achieve wellness. Like for us, we have a process of about 12 different objectives that we try to meet in our design projects, and that's how we establish like what wellness or well-being means.
Yeah, I think it's bringing the credibility back into wellness to instead of it becoming a buzzword or a marketing tool, to actually have that framework or your own way of delivering that wellness and what it means. And in terms of design, how do you see this evolving? Are you seeing a bigger demand for wellness architecture, and what does it entail?
We're definitely seeing a bigger demand. The clients, it, again, it's like you're meeting them where they're at. Some clients are coming to us and they're saying, like, I don't really know what this means. So where do we start? Right. And so there's a lot of education that happens between architect, or, sometimes we're bringing in consultants, right, to help them uh, create the wellness narrative. And it has to be associated with who they think that their client is, right? So location, um, you know, uh, economic goal, uh, and longevity of the project, what type of project it is, because of course we might do a hospitality retreat center. We might be doing a spa, a single standalone spa. So for us, the way that so again, we meet them where they're at, and then we have this 12-step process that's part of our design and spiritual methodology, and we're looking for authenticity. So again, it's the questions that I just mentioned about who's your client, where is your location, what is the history of the land, what is the history of the culture, um, how do we assure that we're embracing nature? Are we creating opportunities for community, privacy, and kind of the in-between spaces? Are we expressing the interdependence of humanity within the design? And how can we do that? What does that mean? Oftentimes that's associated with local artisans, understanding, again, it's all interwoven. It's all interwoven because again, I go back to the history of place. Holistic and regenerative sustainability, like what are we doing to the land? Are we being mindful of the watershed? Are we rebuilding the environment in a way that is supporting the animals and the plants that are native to that area? Are we farming in ways that are supportive of, again, indigenous agriculture? Is it multisensory? We're really aware that these projects are creating the backdrop of people's lives, right? So it's the memories. You might be alone. You might be traveling alone. You might be traveling in a family. You might be traveling in a group of individuals who've just met, right? And the spaces that we're creating are the backdrop of the memories of your life. So all of the elements, and those were just some of them that we touch on, are important because everyone is different, right? So I might notice that there's an artisan element to the screens that are between the banquettes in a restaurant or in a lounge. And you might notice the stone on the floor. Or you might notice that there's a framed view to nature, right? Like we're going to gravitate towards different things. And so you have to kind of look at the totality of the design. And then I also think that, again, like the theory, the method, the philosophy of the brand has to be expressed in the design.
Oh, absolutely.
And it has to be, it's not just a design, it's also like the offerings, right? So all of it.
And I think that is probably one of the reasons why traditionally wellness and hospitality, as you said, there's several types of brands out there and we have to meet them where they are. But traditionally, wellness has not had that track record of stellar performance, be it through offerings or be it through architecture and design. I'm sure you'd have probably had your fair share of what is she saying? And what does she mean by that? I mean, doesn't matter. I mean, it's a lot quicker to just put up a building and not think about the material you put into it or not think about how it impacts the health or well-being of your guests because you don't think they care about that. They care about the gold faucet, for example. So, wellness traditionally does not have that track record of standard performance. How do you think we can make wellness credible or build that track record going forward?
I think one way is when we start to integrate wellness from the beginning, because I do think that there is a lot, and this isn't wrong to bring wellness in later, but obviously you have a different result, right? Like if you start with wellness at the beginning, you're gonna be making different decisions. And even myself, like I've made the mistake of waiting too long to start to talk about wellness in a project and wishing I could go back and make some changes, right? So starting early. And then I think there's a huge movement in studying the success a from a science perspective, right? Like, we're talking a lot about neuroaesthetics now. We're talking about biophilia. We're talking about, these are all like scientific studies to talk about what actually happens to our body. Now, a developer, sure, they might altruistically be interested in people's well-being, but if that doesn't support the bottom line, then it's not going to change, right? So it's one of the, and so this, I think starting early, using the science to support what actually happens, and then using the economic data to show why we should bring in wellness from the beginning. I think it's those three things that really can help it start to show the benefits. And I also think that, our world is changing so fast,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we don't even really know what it's going to look like in 10 years. And so, or even five for that matter, I have this feeling that part of wellness and well-being, this movement, is a reaction to what's happening with AI. And the more we lean into AI, the more it's like we're returning to the knowledge of our own being that we have pushed out through the technology age and through even the industrial age, right? Like a lot of the things we're talking about, although science and finance is studying it now, we intuitively have known this, right? Like if you're somebody who's consciously aware of your beingness, you're aware that being connected to nature is positive. You're aware that materials that are real, not man-made, change the way that you feel, right? Like you're aware of all these things. So I think that if we can lean into those three things, the industry is going to continue to grow because we're actually going to need it more and more and more.
I agree. And I also think it's us also meeting them where they are, as wellness as a collective, be it from the offering side, the design side, or, meeting our clients, our landowners, our developers where they are. They're also going to have this growing want and need, at least definitely in the future generations coming, of wanting to not just build for the sake of building, of also thinking about what are we doing and what are we leaving for our future generations. And of course, profitability is important. And that said, not at any old cost, how we have been doing it through, as you said, the industrial age and now all this technology. There has to be that human connection somewhere, that connection with the life force, however we want to call it, right? And you said that oneness with the land, oneness with the community, oneness with the culture. And I tend to work a lot with landowners. So they don't even call themselves boutique hotel owners. They have a piece of land they've inherited or they have purchased and they want to build something meaningful on it. And it normally tends to be very difficult to know how do you build on it. What advice would you give them? They're in the start of it all. What advice would you give them?
It will sound very woo-woo.
Oh, please go ahead.
I think that listening to the land is really where one has to start. And sometimes people don't know how to do that. And they need to bring team members in to help listen to the land. It's walking the land, it's sitting with the land, it's creating ceremony or ritual on the land to be able to actually hear what the land needs. and hear what the culture needs, what the community needs, so that what's created is truly authentic and place driven. I think that creates opportunity to, I think that creates like a much better final development, which may end up being, communal housing, or maybe it does become a boutique hotel, or maybe it's, regenerative farming, or maybe there's so many opportunities, but I think a lot of times it's actually great that your clients don't know yet, because they can allow it to become what it's supposed to be versus, hey, I want to create this, mega, spa, whatever it is, and I need to find a piece of land for that. Right. So I love that your clients are on the other side of that, are approaching it from like, I have this land, what is it supposed to be?
And what about those owners who have a hotel already? They've built it, and you know how it is in Europe. We sometimes inherit that building and we can't change it due to it's not that easy to change the buildings, and we shouldn't really to maintain the integrity of just the architecture and design. That said, those buildings come with their own trauma, their own story. And how do those owners add principles of spirit that you were talking earlier on about? How do they add it? And I mean, the question is, can they? And if they, how can they do that?
Yeah, I think first of all, there's an assessment of like the entire property, right? So you're going through, and again, there's a lot of energy work that needs to happen. Like, what has happened here over time? What has made this either successful, or maybe it was successful at one point and it's not now. So I want to know all of those things, right? Like I want to know the history of the plate of that structure, what's happened in this structure, who's been here. I also want to know a bit about, the goal, like what sort of wellness or well-being do you want to integrate in? Like what kind of spirit do you want it to have? How do you want people to feel when they're here? So that as you're going through and assessing the existing, you can figure out like what needs to change to shift the energy, right? Because part of it is, again, and you can do this within an exec. We actually work in a lot of existing structures where we are shifting the energy. So sometimes it's changing the flow. We don't work the same way as we used to, but within the context of respecting the past, right? There are some spaces that we actually do energy cleanings, cleanse the space so that we can start over. But again, it's when you cleanse it, it's not that you're dismissing the past, it's that you're healing the past. You're bringing in all of the elements of the past, the details of the past, and then you're looking to the future. Like this is where we want to be. This is how we want people to feel. And now, this is how we make the adjustments, because everything changes. We're in constant evolution.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one, you know, I believe you don't turn your back on the past. You just pull it forward and help use that to propel you into the future.
I mean, I think everything has its own memory and it's part of kind of I think the fabric that is meant to continue and move forward. And are there any last words you want to mention or any concepts you want to talk about to start wrapping up?
Yeah, I mean, I just, our I just want to talk a little bit about design spiritual, because our process of design, which I spoke a little bit about, is design is spiritual. And I think it's really important because the premise is that that design is actually an expression of the interconnectedness of humanity. And when we start to have reverence for the land, the process, the people who build, the people who uh, 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 make our lives possible, design can't help but create some positive, right? It can't help but enhance our well-being. And so when we talk about these different objectives in design, and actually, like, we're not the only ones. There's a lot of different firms out there and even organizations that are trying to create a framework of what does wellness mean, or how do you achieve wellness, or what are the metrics to wellness. But I think the part that with these metrics sometimes is missing is the story. Like, we actually need to find ways to physically express the story so that we can not just that we experience our interconnectedness, right? So that's the approach that we take, and I really hope that that is brought into the different metrics more and more, because it is all educating, and it's an invitation. It's an invitation.
I mean, I agree with you. You know, wellness can't, I mean, you go into a place and you just know it just gives you beautiful energy, or it doesn't. It's designed perfectly. It could even be a hole in the wall kind of place, and it just brings you, it just got something powerful about it. So I agree, our environment really does either enhance or actually also have the complete opposite. And we see this also with go to any place, your workplace, your children's schools, hospitals. It's not about just pretty and aesthetics, you know, which is important. Clearly, I mean, we like and appreciate beauty, but it goes beyond that. You know, we feel one with the structure. Our wellness is enhanced when we are in a place or an environment that allows us, you know, to elevate ourselves. And I think no one can deny that feeling. You know, no one can deny that. And you can also be in places where you're thinking, oh, I'd never go back there again, no matter how pretty it was, right? So I do think, you know, we will be seeing people are getting more and more aware of how their physical space affects them. And I think, you know, all this awareness you're drawing to it is powerful. And I agree with you that we will be seeing this, you know, more and more people want it going forward. So kudos to the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being on this call with you and talking. I enjoy meeting other people and being in community with people who have similar views and values in the industry.
And I love what you do, Rachel. And thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Thank you.